I am Anil Kumar. We'll discuss angles formed by intersecting lines in this video. I am going to cover all these topics one by one. We'll understand what are intersecting lines, what are parallel lines, perpendicular lines, how about opposite angles and adjacent angles, how is straight angle different from supplementary angles, and what are complementary angles. And then we'll also find all possible angles when these lines are intersecting at a point when two are given to you. So we'll take this as an example later. So let's begin by understanding about lines. So as far as the lines are concerned, lines extend on both the sides. We normally draw with arrows on both the sides. So what line is? Line is a set of points, right? So we have a lot of points on this line. We have many points, infinite points. So line extends on both sides. So this arrow normally we should draw, but many times we do not draw. So it is assumed that it extends on both the sides, and so we normally miss sometimes the arrows. Okay. Now let's talk about parallel lines. What are parallel lines? Parallel lines are the lines which do not intersect. For example, if I have a line like this and another line which is same distance away, so these two lines are parallel lines. So what we have here are parallel lines. So whenever we have parallel lines, distance between them remains same. So they are always a fixed distance apart, right? That is to say that if I have these two lines, then the distance here and somewhere there will be exactly same. So then they are parallel. They will never intersect. So we have parallel lines which never intersect. So that is what parallel lines are. Now, that is to say, even when you extend them, they will not intersect. Right? Like the rails. Like two ends of this paper on which I am working. So the two edges of this paper, they never intersect. They form parallel lines. Okay. Now let's talk about intersecting lines. So what are intersecting lines? Intersecting lines, on the other hand, are the lines which will intersect. For example, if I have one line drawn like this, then the other line, which is not parallel, maybe kind of like this. As you can see, they will intersect. So intersecting lines are not parallel lines. They intersect, and they will always intersect at a point. So they intersect at only one point. So we're talking about two lines, two different lines, right? So what we're talking about here is two different lines. So they have only one point in common, and this point is called point of intersection. Correct? So that is how we'll understand our lines and point of intersection. Now, as we move forward, when we have more than one line, we'll try to give them names. So I will write name of the line as L, and if there are more than one line, I'll write L1 and L2. So that becomes two different lines. And a point of intersection by a capital letter, let's say P, that forms a point of intersection. Is that clear? Now, whenever the lines intersect, you can see that there is an angle between them. So this is kind of an angle. So intersecting lines will form four different angles. Do you see that part? So we do have a concept of angle now. So at times what will happen is that the intersecting lines could be perpendicular. That is, the angle formed is 90 degrees. That is 90 degrees. So if the two lines are intersecting and the angle formed is 90 degrees, then we say they are perpendicular lines. So here, the angle of intersection, angle formed by intersecting lines, is 90 degrees. In that case, the lines are perpendicular. Correct? So that is the basic concept with which we'll move. Now we'll talk about these angles, right? Okay. So we talked about intersecting lines. Let me again draw a set of lines which are intersecting. Let's say these are two lines. We'll call them L1 and L2. So when they intersect, we can have four angles, for example, right? So we have these four angles. Let me name them as angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Now, if you see these angles, then a pair of angle is opposite angle. Do you see these 2 points, these two angles? They are on the other side. So what we notice here is that the angle 1 and angle 3 are opposite angles. In short, angles could be written like this. Similarly, angle 2 and angle 4 are opposite angles. Now, in opposite angles, they have a common vertex. So in opposite angles, what they have is a common vertex but they do not have common arms. Without common arm. So you see angle 1, it has these two arms with that vertex, and angle 3 has the different arms with the same vertex. So those angles are called opposite angles. Now what are the adjacent angles? Well, angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles. So in adjacent angles, what do you notice? Angle 1 and angle 2, let's look at it. We have one arm which is common. So they have common vertex with one common arm. So in adjacent angles, we have one common arm. In opposite angles, without any common arm. So that is the difference between opposite angles and adjacent angles when we are talking about two lines intersecting. So I hope this concept is clear to you. Now, based on this concept, we have two questions for you. So I'd like you to pause the video and answer these two questions. Question number 1. How many pairs, we can write pairs, right, of non-adjacent angles will two intersecting lines form? And question number 2 is, how many pairs of adjacent angles will two intersecting lines form? So these are the two questions for you. You can pause the video, answer these questions, and then look into my suggestions. Now here is my answer. For the first one, how many pairs of non-adjacent angles? Non-adjacent, as we discussed, we have two pairs, right? So this is one pair, and then we have the second pair. So the answer here is 2. Correct? So there are two non-adjacent pairs of angles. Now the question is, how many pairs of adjacent angles will two intersecting lines form? Well, look at it. Let's name them. As far as the adjacent angles are concerned, I named one, right? Angle 1 and 2 are adjacent, correct? So we have one pair, which is angle 1 and angle 2. How about angle 2 and 3? They are also adjacent. So angle 2 and angle 3 are adjacent. Now 3 and 4 are also adjacent. Angle 3 and angle 4 are also adjacent. And 4 and 1 are also adjacent. So angle 4 and angle 1 are also adjacent. So we have 4 pairs of adjacent angles when two intersecting lines are there. So this is very important to understand, as many times there could be a mistake in answering this type of question. Okay, so I hope that is clear. I hope you are finding it interesting and useful. Now let's move on and learn about straight angles, supplementary angles, and complementary angles. So the major topic here is angles formed by intersecting lines, right? So let's again draw intersecting lines. So this is one line for us, and let's say this is another line for us. Two lines. Let's number them as L1 and L2. They are intersecting at a point P. So whenever we have two intersecting lines, we can see 4 different angles. A straight line, let's consider only line L1. Let's consider only line L1. In that case, you will see on that line, we have these two angles. Let me name them as angle 1 and angle 2. You'll always notice that sum of these two angles, angle 1 plus angle 2, is 180 degrees. And they also form a straight line, correct? So these angles formed by a straight line are called straight angles. Simple as that. Similarly, if I consider the other line L2, let me name this angle here as, let me name all the angles now. Okay. Let's say this is angle 3 for us and this is angle 4 for us. Then as far as the second line is concerned, we have a combination of angles. Let's say angle 3 and angle 2. So angle 3 plus angle 2 is also equals to 180 degrees. So this is also a straight angle. Correct? Now, can you find other straight angles here? We have taken 1 and 2. We could have taken 1 and 4 also. So yes, we have. So angle 1 plus angle 4 is also 180 degrees along the same line. So that is also a straight angle. We have taken 3 and 2. We could have taken 3 and 4 also. So angle 3 plus angle 4 also forms 180 degrees, and these two are also straight angles. So what you really notice here is that straight angles means angles along the same line, right? So straight angles is in short drawn like that. A straight line with a point in between. So it will give you two straight angles. Let's say this is one and the other one is this. So those are the straight angles which are formed when you have a line. And always the measure of straight angle is always 180 degrees. Correct? So that is the concept about straight angle. You will see that they are always adjacent, right? So straight angles, important thing to note here is all the above are along a line. They are adjacent angles. So these two important criteria are also there for straight angles. Does make sense to you? Correct? Okay. Now let's talk about what are supplementary angles and what are complementary angles. Now supplementary angles are angles whose sum is 180 degrees. And for complementary angles, sum of angles is 90 degrees. This is important to understand. So for example, if I have an angle of 60 degrees, let's say, and if I have an angle of 30 degrees, then 60 degrees plus angle of 30 degrees will give me angle of 90 degrees. So that means they are complementary angles. Is that clear? Perfect. Okay. So you notice that supplementary and complementary angles, only we are talking about sum, right? They need not be adjacent. That is important to understand. From here, can you say that straight angles are supplementary angles? I think yes, you can, right? Now, since straight angles will add to 180 degrees, they are always supplementary angles. Do you understand? So straight angles will be supplementary angles also. Got it? So I hope this concept is absolutely clear. Now, if that is clear to you, then you should be in a position to answer these 4 questions. So take this as a test. Explain if the following statements are always true, sometimes true, or never true. So we have 4 questions for you. You can actually pause the video now, answer, and then look into my suggestions. Question number 1. If angle 1 and angle 2 form a straight line, then they are supplementary angles. Is it always true, sometimes true, or never true? So you have to write in these terms. Question 2. If angle A1 and angle 2 are supplementary angles, then they form a straight line, straight angle. Question 3. Two set of complementary angles will form supplementary angles. So complementary angles add to 90, supplementary angles add to 180 degrees. Question 4. Interior angles in a triangle are supplementary angles. So let's look into these answers. I hope you got them all right. Question 1. If angle 1 and 2 form a straight line, that is to say that we have a straight line. So let me just, there are two angles. Let's say this is angle 1, this is angle 2, and their sum is always 180. So if angle 1 and 2 form a straight line, then they are supplementary. So this statement is always true. So we'll write always true. Is it okay? Question 2. If angle 1 and 2 are supplementary angles, then they form a straight angle. This statement may not be true always, right? So it is sometimes true. Can you explain how? Well, we could have one angle like this and the other angle not adjacent but somewhere else. You get my point? So not adjacent but somewhere else. Kind of like this. Now since they are not connected, that means they do not have common vertex. And so this is sometimes true. Only when they have common vertex that could be true. Do you understand? So this is very important to understand. Okay? So if angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, that means they add up to 180 degrees. In that case, they may not form a straight angle. Okay? Because straight angle means a straight line. Question 3. Two set of complementary angles will form supplementary angles. This statement is sometimes true. Well, sometimes you could have something like this. Let us say we have this situation, correct? Now, in this situation, we have angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. So we do have two sets adding up to supplementary angles, correct? But look here, we could also have a situation where we have in this itself different combinations, correct? So let's take this type of an example. Now in this case, this angle plus that angle is 90 degrees, correct? Is that true? And what you also notice is that this angle plus that angle is also 90 degrees. Is also 90 degrees. So, for example, I have a combination in which we have angles like 60 degrees, 15 degrees, and 15 degrees. In that case, I may have 15 degrees plus 75 degrees equals to 90 degrees, correct? I may have 30 degrees plus 60 degrees equals to 90 degrees. But when I add all of them, I do not get 180 degrees, correct? But when I add 15 degrees plus 60 degrees plus 15 degrees, that is not equal to 180 degrees. You're getting the idea. Correct? So I could have different combination in this fashion so that two sets of complementary angles, these are the two sets of complementary angles, will not form a supplementary angle, especially when they have a common arm as shown here. So that is an example to show you not always, right? So that is very important. Now let's look into question number 4. Interior angles in a triangle are supplementary angles. This statement is always true because the sum of angles in a triangle, let's say we have a triangle here, right? So we are talking about these three angles. They are always add to 180 degrees. How can you prove it? If I draw a straight line here, you will notice that this angle is same as that angle, and you will also see that this angle is same as that angle. So these three angles form 180 degrees. You get an idea? So this statement, interior angles in a triangle are supplementary angles, is always true. Perfect. So I hope you enjoyed these 4 examples. They are extremely useful. So let's get back to our original page. So we have learned about intersecting lines, parallel lines, perpendicular lines, opposite angles, adjacent angles, straight angles, supplementary angles, and complementary angles. Here is the last question for you. So we are given 3 intersecting lines with 2 angles. I would like you to pause the video and write down possible values of the missing angles. Let's see how to do it. So let's say, what is this angle 1 equals to? What is this angle 2 equals to? What is this angle 3 equals to? And what is this angle 4 equals to? Let's figure it out. How will you find it? Well, I will discuss opposite angles once again to answer this question. So what you noticed earlier is that if I have a set of intersecting lines, then we do get a pair of opposite angles. Now these angles are equal. So let me write down. Opposite angles are always equal. Now that will help you to answer this question without any problems, right? So I hope that makes sense. So now, taking this into consideration, angle 65 and angle 3. So we have angle 3 should be equal to 65 degrees. This is opposite angle. Correct? And angle 1 should be equal to 55 degrees since it is also opposite angle. Correct? So we get that. How do you get angle 2? Angle 2 you'll get by taking away from 180 degrees 65 and 55 degrees. Since they form a straight angle, right? So this is a straight line. So this forms 180 degrees. And therefore, angle 2 is 180 minus 65 minus 55, which is equal to 60 degrees, correct? So we get angle 2 as 60 degrees. Now since angle 4 is opposite to angle 2, it has to be equal to angle 2, and that should also be equal to 60 degrees. Correct? That makes sense? So we have seen in this particular case so many adjacent angles formed by 3 intersecting lines. Now, the question for you is, how many pairs of adjacent angles in this figure. Let's call this as figure 1 in figure 1. So that, I'd like you to put this in comments and let's see who gets it right. How many pairs of adjacent angles do we have in figure 1? I hope you enjoyed this journey of learning about angles formed by intersecting lines. We also learned how to solve many related questions. If you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. Feel free to share them with your friends. Thanks for watching and all the best.